There was a time when people believed that success came only to those born with privilege, wealth, or status. But the 21st century has shifted the axis of possibility. Today, success is no longer reserved for the chosen few. It is born through choices, through the relentless pursuit of growth, and most of all, through the unwavering power of education. Education is no longer a formality. It is not confined within four walls. It is not just a degree or a grade. It is the voice of awareness, the fire of transformation, and the light that cuts through the fog of limitations. In a world driven by speed, competition, and constant change, education is no longer just an option, it is the foundation. The firm ground beneath every dream, every invention, every meaningful change. And in this era where everything evolves by the second, it is education that gives you not only knowledge, but the wisdom to use it. The 21st century does not demand perfection, it demands preparation. It demands courage. It demands thinkers, creators, doers, and only education can birth them. So today, let's reflect deeply on four powerful pillars that prove why education is not only the foundation, but the fuel for success in this era. Number one, education is not about learning facts, it's about learning how to think. There are people who know everything and yet understand nothing. They walk through life quoting books and statistics, but when faced with real-life decisions, they freeze, they break, or they blindly follow. Because knowing something is not the same as understanding it. Education, in its truest form, is not the accumulation of facts, it is the awakening of thought. We have been taught to remember, to recite, to repeat, but have we ever been taught to reflect? To pause and ask, why is this true? What does this mean to me? How can this be better? Education that liberates is not about answers, it is about giving birth to questions. The most powerful people are not the ones who know everything, but the ones who dare to question everything. When a mind learns how to think, it no longer depends on the world to give it direction. It begins to chart its own course. It begins to observe the world, not just absorb it. It listens with openness, but it does not obey blindly. It reflects before reacting, and it creates, instead of conforming in a world of automation and artificial intelligence. What will set us apart is not how much we know, but how deeply we think. Machines will always be faster at data, but the human mind, trained by education, will always be better at wisdom. Thinking is not a process of the mind alone. It is an act of courage. When you think critically, you challenge what others accept. You risk standing alone in a room full of followers. But that is the true mark of education. It teaches you to stand with your mind when the world wants you to kneel with your fear. It gives you the strength to believe in your voice even when it trembles. True education is not visible in your certificates, it is revealed in your character. It shows in the way you make choices, in the way you treat others, in the way you solve problems without creating new ones. Thinking minds don't need spotlights because their light comes from within. It is easy to teach a child how to read a book, but it is powerful to teach a child how to read the world. The difference between literacy and learning is this one fills the memory, the other frees the soul. We do not need more informed people, we need more awakened minds. A truly educated person is not threatened by disagreement. They welcome different ideas because they understand that truth is not a single thread, it is a tapestry. And only by seeing multiple perspectives can we understand the full picture. Education teaches us to hold our opinions loosely and our compassion tightly. Thinking deeply is not about being better than others, it is about being better than who you were yesterday. It is about breaking your own boundaries every single day. A thinking mind is not afraid of being wrong because it knows that every mistake is a stepping stone to a clearer path. The classroom that matters most is not made of walls, it is made of mirrors. And the hardest lessons are not about equations or grammar. They're about honesty, humility, and hunger to grow. Education gives us the courage to look in those mirrors and confront the parts of us that still need healing. When we think with awareness, we begin to lead with integrity. We stop copying the world and start co-creating it. We stop chasing approval and start following purpose. We stop living in noise and begin listening to our own truth. No book can give you meaning until you learn to search for it. No teacher can pour wisdom into you until you learn how to absorb it. Education is not a transaction, it is a transformation. It is not about what you get, it is about who you become. The most powerful thoughts do not shout, they whisper, and the educated mind hears them even in silence. It hears the quiet voice of conscience, of creativity, of connection. It learns that the loudest person in the room is not always the wisest, and sometimes the deepest thoughts are the ones we keep unspoken. Education is not limited to a stage in your life. It is the very stage upon which your entire life is performed. To learn how to think is to learn how to live. To think beyond limits is to live beyond fear. And to live with awareness is to rise above everything that tries to hold you back. The foundation of success is not built on how much you know, it is built on how deeply you understand. And when your mind becomes your greatest tool, no challenge can ever become bigger than your capacity to overcome it. Number 2, education teaches adaptability, the most vital 21st century skill. The world used to reward consistency. It used to reward those who followed a single path and stayed on it for decades. But the world we live in now rewards flexibility. It asks us to bend, to twist, to reshape ourselves over and over again without losing who we are at the core. In the face of rapid change, only the educated thrive not because they know everything, but because they know how to keep learning. Education teaches you how to let go of rigidity, how to loosen your grip on comfort zones, and how to greet change not as a threat, but as an invitation. Every moment of change is a call for reinvention. And reinvention is not a natural instinct, it is a learned skill. Education trains you in the art of evolution. It teaches you how to read the signs, how to pivot with grace, and how to remain calm in the storm of uncertainty. An educated mind does not panic in the face of the unknown. It pauses, it observes, it reflects, and then it acts not out of fear, but out of strategy. Adaptability is not about compromise, it's about wisdom. It's about knowing when to fight and when to flow. The most successful people are not always the ones who started with the most, they're the ones who moved with the times. They shifted, adjusted, learned, and kept climbing. And at every stage, it was their mindset shaped by education that made the difference between giving up and growing up. Adaptability does not mean you abandon who you are, it means you expand who you are. Education teaches you how to evolve without erasing yourself. It helps you remain rooted while reaching higher. It builds a foundation so strong that even if everything around you changes, you still remain centered. The pace of the 21st century is ruthless. But an educated soul learns how to walk with it. Not by running faster, but by thinking deeper. Not by outworking others, but by outlearning yesterday. Because in the race of relevance, the mind that adapts is the one that leads. Learning how to adapt means you become unafraid of failure. You understand that falling is just part of the process of flying. Education reframes failure not as the end, but as feedback. Not as rejection, but as redirection. It helps you see obstacles not as roadblocks, but as recalibrations. There are moments when life will change without asking your permission. And in those moments, you will either break or bend. Education trains you to bend. It gives you the elasticity to adjust your shape without losing your strength. Adaptability is not just a professional skill, it is a life necessity. Relationships change, health changes, dreams change, and those who are educated emotionally, mentally, spiritually, they survive the storm without losing their light. A flexible mind is a free mind. It is not trapped by traditions that no longer serve it. It is not paralyzed by change, it is empowered by it. It welcomes new tools, explores new paths, and builds new bridges. Education is the soil that grows this flexibility. We must teach children not just what to think, but how to shift their thinking when life shifts around them. We must teach them to not fear uncertainty, but to befriend it. Because the future belongs to those who can reinvent themselves again and again, without apology and without hesitation. Adaptability is the silent power that lives inside every curious learner. It says, I may not have all the answers now, but I trust myself to find them. I may not know what tomorrow holds, but I know how to prepare. And most of all, I know how to keep growing. Education does not give you a fixed map. It gives you a compass. It teaches you how to navigate your journey no matter how often the path disappears. It teaches you how to reimagine your goals, how to redesign your vision, and how to recreate your story every time life rewrites its script. The foundation of 21st century success is not stability, it is adaptability. And education is the fire that forges minds that are ready, minds that are open, and minds that are brave enough to keep moving forward. Number 3. Education breaks cycles and builds legacies. There are homes where no one has ever dreamed beyond survival. There are towns where possibility is a foreign word. There are hearts that have been told from birth, this is all you'll ever be. And then comes one moment, one person, one classroom, one teacher, and suddenly the entire narrative begins to shift. Education doesn't just change individuals, it breaks the weight of generations. It interrupts inherited limitations and gives birth to new definitions of what's possible. One child holding a book becomes a seed of revolution in a family that's only known struggle. One diploma becomes a bridge across a river that no one thought could be crossed. There are families that carry cycles like silent burdens. Cycles of silence, cycles of poverty, cycles of oppression. And no one dares to break them because no one knows how. But education walks in quietly, and instead of asking for permission, it begins to break the chains. Not with noise, but with knowledge. A child who learns is not just lifting themselves, they are lifting their siblings, their parents, their future children, and every generation that will come after them. Education is not a personal victory, it is a legacy that echoes through lifetimes. It replaces despair with dignity, invisibility with identity, and silence with self-worth. There are many ways to inherit wealth, but the most powerful inheritance is knowledge. Because money can be spent, but wisdom can be passed down endlessly. When you educate one mind, you equip an entire bloodline with the tools to dream louder, live better, and rise higher. Some people think education is just a system, a building, a routine. But it is far more sacred than that. It is a fire that spreads without burning. It is a light that reveals paths where there once was only darkness. It is a voice that whispers hope into the hearts of those who've only known fear. The most powerful revolutions have not begun with weapons, they've begun with awareness. They've begun in small classrooms with chipped walls and bold dreams. They've begun when one young girl decided to learn despite every barrier. They've begun when one forgotten boy held a book and saw a future his father never had. Education gives you the courage to say, I will not repeat the past. It teaches you that your story doesn't have to match your parents' and your future doesn't have to resemble your past. It teaches you that history is not a cage, it is a lesson. And your choices can become the beginning of a new chapter for everyone after you. When you learn, you empower. You begin to see yourself not as a victim of circumstance, but as an author of destiny. You no longer wait for someone to save you, you become the solution, the breakthrough, the change you wish to see. Some people build houses out of bricks. Others build dynasties out of degrees. But those who understand the real power of education know that the greatest architecture is the human mind. And when you build that, everything else follows. The weight of poverty is not just in the lack of money, it is in the lack of awareness, the lack of opportunity, the lack of confidence to believe you deserve more. Education is the antidote. It dissolves shame. It awakens possibility. It builds the bridge between who you are and who you were meant to be. Cycles are stubborn. They cling to families like shadows, but shadows disappear in light. And education is that light. It does not scream. It shines. It enters the most silent corners of society and whispers, you are not defined by your pain. You are designed for purpose. A legacy is not just what you leave behind when you're gone. It's what you build while you're here. And nothing builds a stronger legacy than a mind that was once silent, now speaking. A heart that was once afraid, now leading. A soul that was once suppressed, now standing tall with knowledge. There is no shame in being the first to read, the first to graduate, the first to dream. Every cycle breaker walks a lonely path, but they walk with power. Because they know they're not just walking for themselves, they're walking for every voice that was silenced before them, and every soul that will walk after education does not just offer a chance to change. It offers the power to rewrite the story for everyone connected to you. And the pen it gives you is not made of ink, it is made of intention, courage, and the quiet fire to build a new legacy with every choice you make. Number 4, education is not a destination. It is a lifelong journey. There is a common belief that learning ends when school ends, that graduation is a finish line, that degrees mean you now know everything you need. But the truth is, education is not a phase, it is a mindset, a way of living, a path you never stop walking, no matter how far you go. The most dangerous illusion is believing you know enough. Because the moment you stop learning, you start shrinking. You start repeating, not growing. You start copying, not creating. In a world that changes every day, a mind that does not evolve slowly becomes irrelevant. Real education teaches you that learning does not need permission. It does not wait for a classroom. It lives in every experience, every mistake, every conversation, every observation. It happens while you walk, while you fall, while you rise. It is not about being taught, it is about being open. There is something deeply humbling about remaining a student of life. You begin to realize that wisdom does not come from age, it comes from awareness. That knowledge is not power, applied knowledge is. That no matter how much you know, there's always more waiting to be understood. Education begins where ego ends. Because the ego says, I already know. But the learner says, teach me more. And in that willingness, growth begins. The world belongs to those who are still curious. Because curiosity opens doors that confidence alone never could. You do not need to sit in a classroom to be a learner. The world is a living curriculum. Every failure is a teacher. Every person is a book. Every situation is a lesson. The truly educated do not wait for lessons, they seek them. They do not run from challenges, they grow through them. A lifelong learner does not fear change, they anticipate it. They prepare, they reflect, they adapt. They're not married to a single identity, they evolve. They're not addicted to being right, they're committed to understanding. That is the kind of mind the 21st century needs. Degrees may expire, trends may fade, industries may die. But a mind trained to learn will always find new doors. It will always remain relevant. It will always lead, even when everything else falls apart. That is why learning must never end. Every book you read is a mirror into yourself. Every question you ask is a doorway into deeper self-awareness. And the more you learn, the more you realize how much more there is to know. That is not weakness, that is awakening. That is not confusion, that is clarity. Learning is not about speed, it is about depth. Some of the most powerful lessons come slowly, over years, after failures, after reflection. And when they finally arrive, they don't just change your mind, they transform your life. True education teaches you to be uncomfortable. It stretches your thinking, challenges your assumptions, and forces you to confront what you never wanted to face. But in that discomfort, you grow. In that discomfort, you shed what no longer serves you. A mind that keeps learning becomes a light in the dark. It becomes a guide for others. It becomes a safe space for new ideas, new visions, and new possibilities. Learning does not just change you, it ripples out and changes the world around you. Success in this century is not about how much you have achieved. It is about how committed you are to becoming better every day. The competition is not outside. It is between who you are and who you could become. And the only way to win is to keep learning. So wear your curiosity like a crown. Ask questions. Challenge yourself. Read deeply. Listen intentionally. Reflect often. Be a student not just of school but of life, of pain, of people, of purpose. Because in the end, it is not the end that defines you. It is your evolution. And education, in its truest form, is not about where you arrive. It is about how endlessly you grow at the end of the day. Education, the unshakable foundation of 21st century success. In this vast and unpredictable landscape of the 21st century, where technology evolves faster than thought, where ideas rise and fall within hours, and where the world no longer rewards what you know but how you think, education remains the only constant force that cannot be replaced, replicated, or erased. It is not just the beginning of success, it is the blueprint of every meaningful journey, the ground beneath every lasting achievement, and the quiet architect behind every impactful soul. Education is not a destination you reach. It is the compass that keeps you moving when the road disappears. It is not just a stepping stone to a job, it is the foundation of your identity. It teaches you how to think with clarity, adapt with grace, rise above limitations, and keep growing long after others have stopped. In a world that is always shifting, education grounds you not in facts, but in the power of thought. Not in rules, but in reasoning. Not in history, but in vision. It liberates the silent and empowers the unheard. It breaks generational curses and builds eternal legacies. It prepares the mind not just for careers, but for life, for choices, for resilience, for truth. It teaches you how to rise in a world that tries to box you in. It makes the invisible child visible. It turns whispers into voices and voices into movements. The 21st century will belong not to those who follow what already exists, but to those who create what has never been. And those creators will not be defined by status or inheritance. They will be shaped by education, by their hunger to learn, to grow, to evolve. Because education is the silent revolution that starts within, and the world outside only changes when the world inside transforms first. So if you truly seek success in this century, the kind that is not shaken by failure, not broken by rejection, and not limited by your past, then let education be your foundation. Let it be the voice that guides you, the fire that fuels you, and the light that leads you even when everything else fades. For in every age, and especially in this one, education is not just the path to success, it is success itself in its most powerful, purest, and most personal form.